All right, welcome to another edition of Solutions 2023. My name is Mike Stark.
And I'm Keith Curry.
And for those of you that have not listened to the podcast before, we welcome you. We're happy to have you with us. And just briefly, this is sort of a political discussion without drama, without stress, and with civility. Keith is a former, well, not a former Republican, right? You're still a Republican,
Still
right?
a Republican. What time is it?
But he's not on board with a lot of the things the Republican Party is doing today. He'd like to see his party back. The two of us are going to talk politics and talk reasonably about things. Hopefully, we haven't yelled at each other yet, which is a good sign. Yeah, that's a good sign. So anyway, that is what the basis of the show is. We're glad you're with us. And today we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to start with what just went down in the House of Representatives yesterday as of this taping, with the Speaker McCarthy being dethroned. What are your thoughts on what has happened there?
Mike, I've been in politics, been a Republican activist, 50 plus years. I've been involved in politics so long. I remember watching the 1968 Democratic Convention live from my parents' house and all of the chaos that entailed and what it meant for the Democratic Party going forward. They ended up losing 5 of the next 6 elections after the chaos, because what that showed was the divisions of the party, the philosophical, breakups, people that just really couldn't be together anymore. And it took them several election cycles to put that back together. If it weren't for Watergate, they would not have won the Carter election. Watching what was going on with the Speaker's vote yesterday made me believe that this is the comparable week for the Republicans. Really? It is the week that all of the divisions finally came out into the open, and they were utterly and completely irreconcilable, and are probably going to take several election cycles to fix because of the chaos that reigned. It was utterly inexcusable. Matt Gaetz has no ideological basis. He is simply in it for his own ego, and he's auditioning to have some kind of a shock TV show when he leaves the Congress, which may be this week, hopefully. It was just disgraceful. McCarthy was punished for actually doing the act of governing to keep the government open. He should have, frankly, reached across the aisle to work with the Democrats. People don't remember that in California, Willie Brown became Speaker. The majority of his votes were Republican votes. He was then able to consolidate his Democratic base and became a bane to the Republicans for the balance of his speakership. But he got elected initially with Republican support because he was able to reach across. McCarthy, had he been a more flexible, a more focused, a more visionary leader, could have done that by making some concessions to the Democrats, changing these rules so that we don't have reoccurring chaos based on the lowest common denominator in the House. And he didn't do that and suffered for it. And the Republicans are in complete and total disarray. You've got people talking about everybody from Donald Trump to Newt Gingrich coming back to Jungle Jim Jordan, who is perhaps the most incompetent congressman up there, as the next speaker. But none of them are running on the I can govern, I can get stuff done. Getting stuff done has become a bad thing.
Right. So let me ask you this. Is compromise completely dead in Washington these days?
Compromise, which is the only way government works, particularly when government is divided, has been given a bad name, and it's become a third rail for people, which makes it highly difficult to do, and it requires skillful leadership to do it. The Republicans are punishing people who attempt to demonstrate that leadership.
And when that happens on one side, the other side takes the ball and runs with that philosophy as well, right? So
that's correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Yeah. So there's a pushback on both sides when one party or the other decides that it's our way or the highway, right?
Well, what Hakeem Jeffries did is he showed video clips. I guess McCarthy was on Face the Nation bashing the Democrats. He showed those video clips in the caucus meeting where they were deciding whether or not they were going to cooperate with McCarthy. And on the basis of those clips, they said, we're not having anything to do with this guy. It's not our job to bail him out.
Okay, so they pushed back immediately on that. If the Democrats had made a deal with McCarthy, would things have been different, do you think?
Here's the deal I think the Democrats could have made. They could have gotten some maybe committee assignments. They could have gotten some budget priorities. They could have, first of all, they should have worked with McCarthy to eliminate the stupid rules he agreed to about one person can bring up a motion to vacate the chair.
Right.
I think by using the federal budget and this upcoming 45-day or now 40-day continuing resolution expiration, made his deal there, cut the crazies out entirely. What a strong speaker would have done would have been to send Matt Gaetz to an office in the Capitol Hill Metro Station men's room and cut his staff. And, that's what Willie Brown would have done. And that would have sent a message that, we're not going to tolerate nonsense any longer. I mean, I've heard from Republicans across the country who are just disgusted by how this went down.
And it's really a minority when you look at it, a real minority of the Republicans in Congress, right?
It's 5 people, and they got another 8 of them to go along. So it's Matt Gaetz and the 7 dwarfs is what they're calling them. But they don't have any ideology. They call themselves conservative. They're not conservative. They can't spell conservative. They don't have spending priorities. They want to cut the budget. They don't know where they want to cut the budget, probably not in their districts. They're just creating havoc and chaos. That's what they want to do because, they've been encouraged to do that by Trump, who was on the sidelines cheering them on. Yeah, if you don't get everything you want, shut it down.
Right. And it seemed like there was even a little bit of a splinter in the Freedom Caucus because not everybody participated in this takedown of McCarthy, right?
No, there actually, there's 20, 30 people in the Freedom Caucus. There were 8 votes to remove McCarthy. So there are some Freedom Caucus people who are actual conservatives who have an ideological agenda, who want to get things done. But they recognize that this is not helping their cause at all.
So the end results to the American people are this is just chaos, and they're looking. Where are they looking? If they're a Republican and they don't like the Biden policies, where are they looking at the next election, or are they just not going to participate?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of fear that neither party is going to participate, but it's particularly evident for the Republicans who have demonstrated a lack of an agenda. Back when Reagan was running, I was at a conference and Jesse Helms flew into town to announce that the platform was a good platform and that Republicans should support it. Conservative Republicans should support it. The platform fight was the big issue for Pat Buchanan. It was the big issue in Lyndon Johnson's 64 campaign about civil rights. Platforms are meaningful. They tell you where the party wants to go philosophically and that they have a philosophy. The Republicans abolished the platform altogether under Trump in 2020.
Right.
So now this is not about issues. This is not about spending. These people can't spell spending. This is simply about, chaos and stepping up to the establishment and creating a mess. And that's what they do. And because it's, Republicans who care about issues, which are most of them, care about bread and butter concerns, just throw their hands up and say, I'm either not going to vote or I'm going to vote for the other guys because the Republicans need a timeout, or I'm going to find a third party. None of that is good for the Republicans, and most of it's probably not good for American democracy overall.
So where does a guy like you, who is pretty much a lifelong Republican, how do you maneuver all this? Now, let's make it clear that you have retired for the most part from politics, other than this wonderful podcast that you're doing. But where does this put a guy like you?
Well, there's about 20 to 25% of Republicans who fall into the never Trump camp, who are not going to support Trump under any circumstances. And that's enough, by the way, for him to suffer a massive defeat in November, having 20% of the party peel off. I think we've got some outstanding candidates who are running, who could unify the country, who could lead the country, who could set forth a conservative agenda. We have people in Congress, particularly in the Senate, who support that kind of an agenda. But right now, we're seeing the sewer opening and out come the Matt Gaetzes of the world. And for reasons that are unbelievable, they're winning. And this is what happens when the party gets the full infection of Trumpism. It goes all the way through it.
Yeah. Now, you have told me on numerous occasions that things are going to change and that people are going to turn on Trump eventually. I'm looking at the polls and I'm not seeing that. What's going on here, Keith?
Well, let's just look. This has not been a good week for Republicans at all. Let's just look at the really awful, very bad, not good at all week the Republicans had this week. The first Georgia defendant made a deal to plead guilty for the prosecution and turn the state's evidence. Several more lined up right after that deal says, I'll take that deal too. So of the 19 defendants, 9 of them are going to be testifying for the prosecution in the Georgia case. Republicans lost a safe seat in the New Hampshire legislature. Trump was issued a summary judgment in New York that said, the evidence of your business fraud is so overwhelming, we don't need to have a trial on the facts of the case. We're simply going to have a trial on how much damages you're going to pay. The state is asking for $250 million and to have him debarred from doing business there. We got a budget resolution passed. It was passed with McCarthy led on that. He got the Democrat votes to do it. He actually had a majority of Republican votes to pass it, but he had to give up Ukrainian aid to get it, which nobody really wanted to do. And he was utterly humiliated in the process of doing that. The star witnesses for the first impeachment explicitly said there's no evidence disclosed so far that would justify impeachment. One Republican congressman called them a complete and unmitigated disaster. That's why Jim Jordan is unlikely, I think, to become speaker, because he and Jim Comer are the Inspector Clouseaus of investigation as congresspeople. And here's what else happened. Because the debate was at the Republican library, and Trump hates the Reagan Library, one, because they invite other Republicans to come speak in their Time for Choosing series. 2, because Fred Ryan, who I knew was an advance man for Reagan, later went on to become the publisher, I guess, of the Washington Post under Bezos. He's now back to run the library, and he hates the Washington Post. And because Trump is compared to Reagan, and Trump hates everybody that gets compared to him. So what we saw come out in the open is something that's been simmering for more than a year, and that is the Trump versus Reagan legacy fight. And there are people who apparently don't remember Ronald Reagan who are Trumpers completely. And, if he can pick a fight with Tim Scott, he can pick a fight with Ron DeSantis. I want to see the guy pick a fight with Ronald Reagan's legacy. But he'll do it because that's who he is. The former Trump chief of staff came out and confirmed that he said that George H.W. Bush and John McCain were losers because they were shot down, that he didn't want to have wounded veterans in his parade because that was not a good look for him, and that he refused to visit the American cemetery in France. That is so morally despicable that anybody who does that could be a candidate for president is beyond me. And if there is anything that's going to ultimately break the dam is when they start making commercials with those lines. And of course, Cassidy Hutchinson, who was Mark Meadows' chief of staff, came out and said he's the biggest threat to democracy. So there are Republicans now, the Reagan group, the conservative group, veterans groups, who are going to sit there and do their own calculation and say, this guy throws everybody under the bus. There's nothing in it for me to be for Trump. And they're going to move away. Now, they got to do quickly. And I have become doubtful of my own prediction, Mike. I think the numbers are not looking good for the good guys right now. But, nobody's voting right now.
In defense of you, Keith, in past elections, things do change dramatically at times. So,
and I expect he's going to be short $250 million at one Trump Tower by the time this court is finished with him in New York. And then we're going to start the other cases. He's 0 for 3 in civil court. He's 0 for 60 in cases on election fraud. There's only been 2 acquittals in the out of the 1,100 cases in January 6th. So he's not doing well in court.
I don't see any of those numbers going up from the other candidates. That's what concerns me. The Trump numbers stay the same, and so do the low numbers of the other candidates. So I have a little bit of concern there.
The pack needs to winnow down, and somebody needs to come out swinging in a way that is effective with voters. Just to show everybody that I am actually a Republican here, we want to talk a little bit about some of the other polls, because as bad as things are for the Republicans, and like I say, I think this week will go down in history as the 68 convention of the Republicans, where everything turned to crap and it will take them a long time to get back to being a national winning party that can put together winning coalitions.
Before we get off that, though, is this going to affect down the line tickets as well in terms of congressional races and things in the 24 election?
Because of gerrymandering, less so than in past years, but it will, because what it will do is there will be a large segment of the Republican vote who doesn't vote. And that's going to hurt down the line. There'll be, MAGA Republicans who are going to hate, mainstream Republicans and vice versa. And that's going to hurt. There'll be, candidates where the congressional candidate won't appear with the legislative candidate, won't appear with the city council candidate. And, some of them either will or will not want to appear with the presidential candidate.
Gotcha.
So that's going to be what's going to happen. And the Republican Party will go tribal for a period until it decides it's tired of losing.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's talk about the Democratic problems, because there are problems. Biden has a lot of check marks on good things that have happened over the last 3 years. However, I look at my stock portfolio this morning, and it was a nightmare. The gas prices are up. The border's out of control. So tell us, what's up with Biden's numbers and the Democrats?
Well, as we've said before, Biden's got the biggest challenge in politics, the old who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? And people have their own experiences with gas prices, with food prices, with the stock market going down, with investments being less valued, with the real estate market being in the tank, and people are unhappy. So a recent Gallup poll, which is a reputable poll, finds that Republicans, despite the fact that Republicans are at the lowest point in my lifetime, as far as I'm concerned, are trusted on the economy 53 to 39 over the Democrats. On national security, 57 versus 35. On an open-ended question on what is the issue most important to you and which party is best able to address it, Republicans lead 44-36. Now, Republicans have a 56% unfavorable to 42% favorable assessment, but Democrats are 58% unfavorable to 40% favorable.
So they hate everybody.
The people hate everybody. The people are highly unhappy with the candidate's choice.
Right.
And the reason why Republicans have this advantage, by the way, is that independents are breaking the Republicans' way on the issues. So if Republicans will quit bashing other Republicans and quit thinking about stuff that nobody cares about, or trying to come up with impeachment witnesses that testify on the other side, and focus on the economy, on national security, and on issues that people are concerned about, education, crime, they have a tremendous chance to win. But Republicans are organized in a circular firing squad, and they're not. And that's what's giving Biden some hope. Now, I was at an event recently where a Republican campaign official laid out what he thought the strategy was for Trump. He said, first of all, he said, the primaries are over. Trump is going to win. Just get used to it. What's going to happen is it's going to come down to flipping Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia. Now, I did the math, and if you flip those three states, I think you're still one electoral vote short, which is sort of one of the always problems with the math. But the theory is that, one, the Democrats are not going to run Biden. They're going to run Gavin Newsom, and he's going to pick Michelle Obama. And secondly, that Cornel West is going to get 3% of the vote. Now, Cornel West is actually polling 4% of the vote today. And he thinks that's going to be what does it. Now, I think that's, you talk about drawing to an inside straight, and that's really what that is in terms of the political strategy.
Sure.
But it's got some, patina of potential.
It kind of makes sense, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And here's the thing with Robert F. Kennedy now talking about running as an independent, although I think he's going to pull both from Republicans and Democrats. Right. Cornel West, who will only pull from Democrats. You could have Joe Manchin, who I think will pull equally from Republicans and Democrats, and he may be running with a Republican like John Hudson on the no labels ticket. The third party, fourth party, fifth party candidates could make a very significant difference in the election in a way that is not currently foreseeable.
Right. But those third party candidates still don't have a prayer, right?
No, none of them are going to win. I mean, the one that would probably be the most likely would be the Joe Manchin, John Huntsman ticket, but that would require Trump actually being in jail on election day, or Biden being in jail on election day, or Hunter Biden was in court this week too. So you've got those kind of extreme cocked hat kind of things that could make them all of a sudden unviable that would make everybody look for a third party. But that's really never happened and is unlikely to happen.
And if there's several third parties or fourth, fifth parties, the division of votes will, because as you mentioned, some of them will take votes away from the Republicans, some will take away from the Democrats. It's almost a push then if the right combination happens, right?
Well, it is almost a push, but it's almost a push in 6 states where you've got the difference was 100,000 votes,
sure.
And that it can make a difference. And it can make a difference in a way that's not foreseen, because there it's who turns out, why do they turn out, how passionate are they about coming out, and things like that will drive the vote.
We're going to have to do a show at some point, not today, on the Electoral College, because there's more and more discussion about going to a popular vote over the Electoral College. Just briefly, what is your thought on that possibility?
Well, there was a recent poll that showed that people support abandoning the Electoral College. But let's sort of do a little review of history. Al Gore finished ahead of George W. Bush in 2000. His entire margin of victory was contained within Los Angeles County. The other 49 states, George Bush won. In fact, the other 49 states and the other 53 counties, George Bush won. When Hillary Clinton got more votes than Trump in 2016, her entire margin of victory was contained within the state of California. The other 49 states went with Trump. When Trump lost Biden by 7 million votes, those 7 million votes were contained within the 2 states of California and New York. So 48 states went the other way.
Gotcha.
So if you are in one of those other 48 states, you will be basically ceding your political relevance to California and 1 or 2 other states going forward, because you can run up those kinds of margins. And the legislators and governors in those states, can do that math. And I think there will be a lot of resistance to changing the Electoral College, despite the fact that Democrats, because it is now working to their disadvantage, want to see it happen. But keep in mind, California, which used to grow by 600,000 people a year in the 90s, is now losing 600,000 people a year. We could lose 5 congressional seats and therefore 5 electoral votes in the next reapportionment. So what may be an advantage today may not be an advantage tomorrow.
Gotcha. Well, again, we'll keep an eye on that, because there is a rumbling about that. But I'm kind of with you. I don't think it's going to happen. As my other conservative friends have pointed out, that's what differentiates us as a republic compared to a true democracy, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I think we had a good show today.
We did.
And I think we'll be back again soon.
Well, I look forward to it.
All right, buddy. Thanks for joining us on another edition of Solutions 2023. We are going to change the name at some point. But at this point, we welcome you to be part of our family, and send us a note, join our Facebook page, and subscribe to the podcast.
Thanks, everybody.